You're in the Zoom arena, I guess. Is that Carla? So
Carla and Fran.
and Fran. Well, thank you for coming. So again, thank you everyone for coming. I didn't realize that Trina just told me this morning that you guys are actually paying for this course. So thank you so much.
Oh, yeah. We thought it was free, and I said, no, you just don't get paid. We have to get money somehow.
Yeah. So again, thank you so much. It's an important topic. So this is really the culmination of the 2 weeks. So last week was really the prerequisite, sort of the build-up, what we needed to know, and so now we'll get into the nitty-gritty of how you uncover the truth amidst of the pure chaos and nonsense that's out there. I'm going to focus this, as I always do, towards global warming, but it can be applied to anything. Okay, so we've had 4 sessions. Or I think it was last year I did what global warming is and what we can do about it. And then last week we did why people deny global warming. And this week we'll be determining the truth as it says. Okay, so somebody had a question last time about this slide. What was the source of it? I don't remember. Who had that question? You did. So here's...
Oh, I think I asked you about the source of the
Other chart.
chart.
No, you just did that today.
Yeah.
So I'll get that to you. But last week, somebody asked about this one. What's the source of it? And
Okay.
actually, it comes from California Academy of Sciences. They did a telephone survey of 1,000 adults that were 18 and over. And so well, here's a little write-up on it. So it's a little old, although I would suspect not much has changed since then. The question that I had wasn't truly random. Yeah, and these people know what they're doing, so probably it was, but still, 1,000 adults is a lot. But is it representative of the country at large, especially because it's a telephone survey? Back then, it might have been landline survey. I don't really know. And so you're only going to get, so maybe it's more appropriate to say that stat is not throughout the U.S., but it's about those that are willing to answer their landline. But still, it's pretty disturbing. So you know who I am. I do a lot of work professionally in global warming. Well, not creating global warming, but I do a lot of work in spent nuclear fuel and how to process it, recycling, energy conservation. So as a professional, I'm deeply involved in global warming, but that doesn't mean much. It's really as a concerned citizen that I've been really very worried about global warming for many years. So again, this is the book. I know you saw this last time, and I'm willing to make an offer. I'm up in the ante here. So if anybody buys this book and you don't like it for any reason, I will reimburse you. Trina knows how to get in contact with me. I promise I will not abscond to parts unknown. And so you can get it on Amazon. You can go through the publisher, Benton Books, which I don't recommend because they still charge you a lot for shipping, and it will soon be on Barnes and Noble. And if you do get it, if you want me to sign it, I'll be happy to come back and a beer, a glass of wine is all it takes for me. So let me. Okay, so this is the contents of the book. The first part is basically why we deny global warming. That's what we're going to talk about today. And finding the truth amidst a sea of lies. I also have in chapter 2, knowing this, how do you convince people about global warming? And I think somebody mentioned last week that you've got the 20, well, maybe it's the 40%. You can't convince them of anything on one side and the 40% on the other side, so it's the 20% in the middle. And that's very true, I think, generally speaking. So you're not going to convince everyone, but there are techniques you can use. And basically, as you might guess, it really comes down to appealing to their meta beliefs. So we'll do chapter 3. Last time I did what drives global warming, and then part 4, where how bad is it? It's not good. What we can do about it, and there's a lot we can and should be doing. And then the part 3, the middle, is how do we know? How can we be so sure? And the science is really there. I also talk about how science works and it doesn't work. Being a scientist for many, many years, I can tell you it doesn't work the way you think it works, unless you've been in the field yourself. It's all about people. It's about people, their idiosyncrasies, their meta beliefs, and so on. So that's where we are on that. Okay, summary of last week. System 1. We talked about System 1 and System 2, where System 1 is fast, intuitive. It doesn't give you, thank goodness, the ability or the time to think. Because if you did think, you wouldn't be here now watching this presentation. And your ancestors would have never made it either. So there is no organism that can possibly survive without the quick reactions of System 1. You're driving down the street and a squirrel runs in front of you, and the squirrel hits the brakes and turns around and runs the other way. Couldn't do it if it started thinking about it. So it's all about that System 1. But, and this is unfortunate, because of that and because we use System 1 80-90% of our waking time, I don't know what the percentage is, but it makes us very, very easily fooled. So if I wanted to convince you of something, I would try to avoid your critical thinking. We did that little parlor trick where I said, don't read this slide, if you remember, because I was really focusing on your System 1. System 2 is thoughtful, it's very distracted, and it's very, very vulnerable. That's why we don't use it very much. But there are 3 keys that I want you to take away from this talk. The first key you already know about, and that is really try to avoid System 1 and try to push yourself into System 2 when you're thinking about something that's really important, really critical. So we talked about that last week. I'm gonna have a ton of tools for you and internet sites and so on and so forth, but there are only 2 more keys that I want you to come away with. But I'm not going to tell you right now. You'll just have to wait and see. And of course, our meta beliefs. Our meta beliefs is our operating system that we load every morning, and our meta beliefs gives the roadmap to System 1 and System 2. So it's really this 3 that really makes us behave the way we do behave, the way we react, the way we don't react. So this is one of those 3 keys. Slow down. Let System 2 have a fighting chance. Think about it. And don't rush into decisions. Some of the most successful executives I've met, this is exactly what they do. They slow, it's like a quarterback coming out of college going into the pros. It becomes a very, very fast game. They don't do very well until they're able to slow it down. Their mental processes can take in the whole game. It's really the same thing. Slow down, decide what's important, and focus on that in a very thoughtful manner. We are built to believe lies. Maria Karnikova reported on this on some research that she did. And she didn't call it System 1 and System 2, so I'm interpreting a little bit here. But it's really kind of interesting because what she said is, anytime you're confronted with a fact or something that's coming at you, System 1 takes that fact in and assumes it to be true initially, just initially, to be evaluated. And the reason for that is that if System 1 decided that it wasn't true or was unknown, it would never get to us. It would never get into our conscious mind. And so we wouldn't see anything. We would tend not to function. But then what does it do? It has to decide if it should activate System 2 to evaluate the fact. In other words, okay, should I accept this fact or should I sit down, slow it down, and think about it carefully? And it does a nifty little trick. And what it does is, it takes a shortcut. If the fact aligns with a person's beliefs, it goes no further and defaults to true. And so if you have a fact that's coming at you, if you're a religious person, for instance, and it says, well, global warming is not happening and it fits in with your strong beliefs, you're not going to think about it. You're not going to evaluate it. you're going to accept it as true. I can give you an example, a personal example that I have is I do a lot of experimental work. And so when everything is going the way I think it should, I accept it. I don't think about it. If I have an experimental result that's odd or different, I tear apart the experimental system. What went wrong? Okay, if my calculation's correct. And so I'm falling into this trap because it doesn't align with my meta beliefs. I have a result that's different than what I expected. Whereas I might have a result that I expected, but it might be wrong, but I accept it. And that is a pothole that people fall into all the time that I see. So anyway, thank you, Maria, for this information. Okay, so here's the agenda of what we're going to do. I'd like to approach with a bunch of techniques, 10 techniques to determine the truth. Some of it I think will be new. Some of it you're going to say, oh yeah, I could have thought of that myself. And then really importantly, where do you find experts and how do you find them? Because one of the things that I'll mention is if somebody hits me with a fact, what I always say is, what's the source? What's the source of your fact and how credible it is? And, sometimes people then hit me with a different fact that's equally bizarre. Sometimes they go away. I asked a friend of mine about a fact that he gave, which was really, really bizarre. What's your source? And he immediately says, I don't know, I don't remember. Because there was no source, or at least the source was not credible. So we'll talk about the experts and how you can find them, what to look for, and what to avoid. Silver bullets is we're going to really summarize these 10 techniques with a bunch of examples and how you apply them. The next bullet wasn't really part of this class originally, and I don't know if we'll have time to get to it, but I want you to understand that nothing in life can ever be certain, and that life in general, nature, science, is nothing more than a bunch of probabilities. And I'm going to give you an example of this. For instance, you fill up your tank of gas, you see what the price is, you go home a few days later, you need another tank of gas, and you believe that that's the cheapest gas station in the area. Well, you have one fact and one assumption. The fact you have is that I know what the gas was a few days ago. The assumption is that it's still the cheapest around. And we'll talk about how to overcome that. There's a technique you use to overcome that. But it's not possible for that to be exact. And I'm going to give you another, so you need to travel around a bit to see if that's still true. You got up this morning, did you know you're really going to make it here? I mean, you did. Well, mostly everybody did, a few haven't. And then what I'd like to do is two things along with that, is I'm going to show you a slide, and I will guarantee, absolutely, and I'll even put money on it, that you have never seen what's on that slide before, and I will also guarantee that nobody dead or alive has ever seen that slide before. And I can do that, I can prove it to you. There's nothing unusual about it, by the way. And I'll show you that it's likely nobody will ever see it again unless they watch my slide, of course. So and it's all about probabilities and the fact that we don't have a clue intuitively about probabilities, chances, likelihood of things happening, because we never needed to. As I mentioned last time, we're really, really, really good at seeing that saber-toothed tiger in the grass, seeing patterns. We're really, really good at that, surprisingly good. But in terms of understanding probabilities and things, we're not very good. The other thing, too, is a show of hands. Has anyone been in close contact with any extraterrestrial aliens? Anyone here? Oh, that's a pity. Okay, well, I will show you that there is a possibility that you may have been canoodling with an extraterrestrial alien if we get to that. So you'll just have to hold on and see. So 10 techniques to determine the truth. All right, I'd like to start by, I will experimentally prove that the earth is flat, and I will do it with scientific rigor. And I challenge anyone to fault my work. Okay, is everybody ready for this? So I'm an experimentalist. This is what I do for a living. I don't do this for a living, but I do experiments for a living. So what I did was I took a target and I taped it to a signpost. And I had my iPhone, which measured the distance from where I was holding it to the ground, and I pointed it at that target, and I was along railroad tracks, so there were no undulations, it was flat. And then I took a few steps back, I measured my distance, I again took that target and I measured the distance down to the ground, and I kept doing that until I just couldn't really hold it steady enough, it was getting too far away. So if the Earth was round, what you'll see is my data falling along a curve, right, a downwards curve. If the Earth is saddle shaped, you'll see it going up, and if the Earth is flat, you'll see it going flat. So here's my data. This is distance from my starting point. This is distance above or below my starting point. So let's say at 40 feet, I was a fraction of an inch and so on. So you're scattering the data, but by and large, it's pretty flat. So ergo, I will conclude from my data that the Earth is flat. So can anyone address this? And by the way, people in Zoom land, raise your hand or unmute yourself, whatever.
Yeah, it depends how large the world is. I mean, if the world is gigantic, it's going to be flat forever. If you can reach. If the world is small, then you're going to be able to prove that it's round.
Well, that's a very, very good point. But I would argue that it's irrelevant because all I'm doing is talking about the data that I took. And I will tell you, there's nothing wrong with my data. My data is absolutely true.
Yeah, but
So it's proof that you need more data.
Well, your instruments are not that accurate, they're not that precise that you could pick up the change in the curvature of the Earth. I mean, if you could pick up, if there are instruments that can pick up the change in the size of a tree, and that change is not much more than a human hair, there's some equipment out there probably that could do that, but your equipment was not something.
So you think my equipment was not up to the task?
Well, probably not.
Oh, I find that so hurtful.
What,
What, not your intellect, your equipment.
Oh, okay, you're forgiven.
why is there a dot below this thing at 140?
Oh, because I'm holding the camera, and so it could have been that maybe I jiggled my hand a little, but it could be that there was a rise or a drop in the. This is just scatter. You'll see this all the time in experimental data. What I should have done, which I didn't, was put error bars on this because I didn't take enough data to do that. Yeah.
It goes back to what the other gentleman said, it's perspective, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the way they discovered the world was round, right? It was somebody sitting on a mountain watching the nest of the boat disappear.
Yeah, both of you are getting to the heart of the matter. So again, there's nothing wrong with my data. I could probably get it published. Not the most respectable journal,
Yeah.
but I could probably get it published. But focusing and kind of expanding on the very first principle that I want you to take away from this, and we've kind of touched upon it a little, and that is okay. The Earth is round, and see this, you see that. By the way. And this will come into play. I'm going off on a tangent here. There are 6,500 peer-reviewed scientific journals that give 4 scientific papers every minute, 2 million good, bad, and mostly mediocre papers every year. So it should be no surprise that a study can be found to back up virtually any point of view. This is very, very important. And that's not including the bogus journals.
Right.
I'm a peer reviewer for some of this. And I can tell you that I've seen some really awful papers, but they're honest. They're not dishonest. They just don't know what they're doing. So you could pick a topic, pick a point of that topic that you want to take, and you will find a journal. You will find an article on it.
Now with the internet, we can
Oh,
see
yeah.
it all the time, which
Yeah.
it's changed everything.
Yeah. So this is, a photograph, so you can see that the Earth looks pretty round. And then something you were pointing out, the ancient Greeks knew that the Earth was spherical, because they would see, a ship leaving, and they would see the whole ship, and then they would see the top of the mast, and then it would disappear, and they would see that consistently every time, and a round globe is the only thing I could, and I could give you on and on and on, data. So I got all this data, which shows that the Earth is round. I've got a little bit of data which shows the Earth is flat. From that, can you generalize a technique that we can use now? So this is one of the most important things I want you to take away from anything that I say. And it's crucially important and it's simple. The balance of facts principle. Okay, you cannot take a single piece of information that supports your position, no matter how appealing it might be, and ignore the universe of facts that argue against it. And the reason is, you can find facts to support anything. Okay, I can give you facts. In fact, I'm probably going to show you some. I can show you that global warming is not happening, that I actually have data where there's actually a decline in the global temperature. Now, it happens to be because of volcano eruptions, so I can explain it away. But the point here is that it's really the balance of facts, because you will find facts to support any position. And it's corollary. Don't let a single fact derail. People will do this all the time. They'll say, okay, I'm trying to think of a good example that's happened to me recently, but what about this? Can you explain this? Okay, global warming is occurring. It's cold out there today. It's below average. And well, yeah, I could refute that on any number of lines of logic. But the one is, who cares what a single data point is? It's the sum total of all the facts, all the information that you have. Do not be fooled by people that will give you some. The anecdotal stories is a good example of this. Okay, I've got this anecdotal story, ergo, I could generalize. And I think I've got some examples later on, but you see an old person smoking cigarettes. Cigarettes must be okay. It can't be harmful because this guy's 90 years old. Just a single fact. Okay, it's not the entirety. So it's really all about the balance of facts. And in terms of global warming, the facts, completely outweigh the stuff that's against it. And also keep in mind that we can never be certain about anything. Okay, because life, nature, science is nothing more than a bunch of probabilities. And so, how do we get through life? We get through life this way, because what you say is, okay, what is the balance of the information? Where is the preponderance of information? Will I be right every time? No. Will I be right most of the time? Yes. So while nothing can ever be certain, I think you could be certain that the balance of facts works. Okay, so here's an example of that. This goes back a few years when the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change was saying that the scientists are 95% certain that global warming is happening. They're now up to 97%, which, if you know anything about science, is really amazing that there's that sort of consensus. So what he said is, science is only 95% certain. Would you get on an airplane that was only 95% safe? That's a really great soundbite. Mm-hmm. Now, keep in mind, System 1 is trying to manipulate you. Tear this apart from what we just learned. The correct question should be, would you get on a plane that was only 95% safe or one that was 5% safe? Okay, he didn't put that part in. Okay. And yeah, maybe it's only 95% confident that global warming is happening, but compare that to the 5% that it's not happening, I think your decision is obvious, right? You have the preponderance of facts, the principle about that.
But doesn't time have a role in here?
Sorry, again?
Doesn't time have a role in your example, right? You get on a plane and it's a short period of time, right? Versus global warming is over a much longer period of time, so that.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Yeah, it's certainly a dichotomy in a conflict in the time where global warming is happening over hundreds of years and since the Industrial Revolution, and this is a 2-hour flight. So yeah, that's true. There will always be uncertainty, but uncertainty compared to what? And so, I just basically said that. But I can't have it in enough. I got one more key that I'd like to talk to you about, but the two keys are System 1 versus System 2, and then it's the preponderance of evidence. So, uncertainty should never, I just got through this, You've heard the paralysis by analysis, so trying to build some equipment, and the guys that are working on this say, well, we got to analyze this, we got to analyze that, and you never get anywhere. So there'll always be uncertainty, but, rely on experts. We do it every day, right? Auto mechanics, doctors, and so on. So just don't let uncertainty fool you. Uncertainty does not imply fault. Okay, so let's play a game of Texas Hold'em. Does everybody know how to play that? It's basically a poker game, and you're dealt a pair of aces, and you don't know what your opponent has, and there's going to be 5 cards shown that these are community cards, and you get to pick 3 of those to make your 5-card hand. So right now, starting with a pair of aces, your probability of winning is 80%. It's pretty good. I mean, I bet on that hand. I love the bet. So the first 3 cards come, and it's a 9, a 6, and a king. Suicide king. He's got the sword going through his head. I just noticed that. All right. I'm still looking good. I don't think my opponent can beat me unless he's got 2 9s or 2 6s or 2 kings, which is unlikely. So still pretty good. So I'm going to up the ante a little here. And now here are all 5 cards. And so I have 2 pairs. I've got aces and 9s. Get a little nervous, right? So I'm going to call. My opponent has 3 of a kind. He's got 3 9s to my 2 pairs, so my opponent wins. What went wrong? I started out with an 80% chance of winning, and I lost. And I probably put in a lot of money, too. Well, nothing went wrong. Life is uncertain, and we can only deal with the knowledge that we have. Had I played that hand 100 times, 80 times, I would win. Okay, but life is basically uncertain, no matter what you think. But if we stick to the facts, we will be right most of the time. I'm going to get into something else as well, and that is if we stick to the facts, I'm kind of getting ahead of myself, and we start to pick off and destroy the assumptions that we make in life, then we'll be even better. So nothing can ever be certain, but the balance of facts is certain. Okay, now I'd like to go to technique number 2, is judging news sites. So here are a bunch of local ones. Can anybody tell me, have you read any of these, and what do you think about them, both in terms of, well, about anything? Star Democrat's a pretty good one, right? Does anybody read that? What do you think about it?
Okay, locally.
Yeah.
Okay, local news.
Right.
Do you believe what's in it?
Locally, probably. Most of the time.
I do 70%.
After the fact.
70%. Oh, that's interesting. Okay. Any of the other? Any of the other publications?
Baltimore Sun.
Yeah.
I don't believe a whole lot of what's in there anymore. It used to be a really good paper,
Oh, really?
but now it's not.
Why is that?
Yeah, I think it's too stilted and it's like only that thick, I don't think they go into enough depth and give you the full facts.
Okay. Well, I will give you a hint. We're gonna review all of these, okay? And I'll give you, there's one that doesn't belong with the rest. And so, by the way, I'm pretty impressed. I haven't read any of these, but to prepare for this class, I started looking at them, and I was pretty impressed with, fairly accurate. Well, in any event,
What is Avenue News?
where is it?
What is,
I don't know. I think I may have some. I'll show you in a moment. But all right, so these are fact-checking sites that you can go to, and I probably don't have them all, but these are really, really very, very valuable. And I'll tell you that my favorite is Media Bias Fact Checking, mediabiasfactcheck.com. And you can go in. I'll talk about that one. I'll also talk a little about the smog one as well. But you could go in there and by the way, a good thing is don't just go to one, go to several. But you can go to these and it'll give you some pretty good information about the factual content and so on about what you're putting in. And so what I did is I went to mediabiasfactcheck.com to evaluate all of those sites. So there's the website. Let me go back to this for a second. So, you've got National Center for Science Education, NewsGuard, NPR, all of these, Snopes, which is Snopes.com, Unraveled Urban Legends. This one rates news sites. National Center for Science Education provides information on global warming for students and educators, and so on. Fact check is interesting, by the way. Not to be confused with fact check. It checks on politician statements, so you can put it in there and it'll do a fact check on whether it's good or not good. And while I haven't tallied this myself, I would have to believe that if you put in a lot of political statements, probably most of them are wrong, no matter which side of the aisle you're on. So in any event, I went to this one, and here's where the Star Democrat comes up. And it'll give you two pieces of information. It's political leanings, in this case it's least bias, and it's factual reporting. So this goes from very high down to very low. Now, what you want, I think, is stuff that's very high to high. That's where you want most of your publications and internet sites to be. I'm not terribly concerned about the political leaning. What I really am concerned about factual reporting, with the one exception that I noticed, is that if you're either extreme right or extreme left, almost universally, you're going to be down here, low or very low factual. And almost universally, if you're least biased, you're probably going to be high and very high. So according to this, the Star Democrat, least bias based on balanced reporting and high or factual reporting due to proper sourcing. So now, you may be very right that it's just not,
I was going to ask, because part of the bias is the fact that you have a limited amount of space in the paper, and therefore, you choose which stories you're going to put in there. So they may be all true, but you might have left out some important ones.
Yeah, let me tell you something. Don't believe journalists, please. Don't. If you ever read a story that you know a lot about, so I know quite a bit about airplanes and flying. I'm an ex-pilot. I have degrees in aerospace engineering. And when I read an article about an airplane accident or something, I am amazed about the inaccuracies in that, because I have to know a lot about it. And then when I pick up an article about stuff I don't know a lot about, I have to wonder, okay, are there as many inaccuracies in this? And then on top of that, you've got, I could go on about this. You've got they have tight deadlines, they don't truly understand science, and they're just looking at a snapshot. So absolutely correct. And so, and they choose which articles to put into their newspaper. So, and that's why you've got this leaning here. You'll see somewhere it's left of center, right of center, and then of course you've got the editorial content, which I'm okay with, because as long as you state this is an opinion, it's not a factual piece, I'm okay with it. But yeah, the editors, the owners of the paper, Fox News is a great example of that. They choose what to put in. And what they've learned is that they can make a lot of money by biasing their paper towards what the readers want to hear. So it's not so much what the readers need to hear, but what they want to hear. So that's a very, very good point. Okay, Kent County News, similar. Again, I'm really impressed. Left of center, factual is very high. And you can see, we also rate them high for factual reporting due to a clean fact check record. Here we go. Anybody know the Eastern Gazette? Well, good, I'm glad you know. So it's extreme right, and it's very low factual content, which, again, correlates with if you're extreme right or left, you're going to have low content. Overall, the Eastern Gazette is an extreme right bias, imposter website, and questionable, and so on and so forth. So the point here is stay away from this, and I'll show you more. So here's Baltimore Sun. So left of center, getting back to what you were saying, it's really weird which articles. The New York Times is left of center, the Wall Street Journal is right of center, but they're both pretty good, publications because they're both fairly factual. Avenue News. Let's see, somebody asked about this, where it's from. I don't know, but I can go back in the site and it'll tell you its history. Frederick News Post, so same thing, high. These are all high. I didn't choose these. I just, because of their factual content, I just found a bunch of them and just put them on, on a piece of paper and went through them. Cumberland Times and so on. All right, so what I did was, I have 3 tables, and I got a bunch of sites that I could find, and I rated them as factual reporting, high or very high, and mostly factual in the gold standard table. Then I'll also show you the table where it's medium factual, and then the ugly table, which you want to stay away from at all costs because it's low. It's like the Eastern Gazette. You want to stay away from that. So this is where you want to get most of your news from. So this one goes from numeric, down to I. So C-SPAN is very high. Now look at this, by the way, least bias, very high. Now least bias, high. So if you look at all the very highs, Associated Press, least bias. So this one is leaning towards the left, Cosmopolitan. Esquire is leaning towards the left. So let's see, anything here, NBC News, National Review, New York Times is high, left of center. And then this is the last one I'll show you, New Yorker is high, very high, NPR, PBS, as you might expect, Reuters, as you might expect. And so you've got all these. So this is where you want to get your information from. This is in my book, by the way, but you can do it yourself. Just go to that site and punch in a news outlet, and it'll show you. So now to the table. So this is where CNN and Fox News reside. This is, medium factual. Okay, you could go here, but just make sure you fill in with some from the gold standard table. And then the ugly table. Let me tell you, stay away from this. Don't go anywhere near anything on this table because they are nothing more than puppet masters that want to manipulate us, and they don't care about whether it's factual or not. Right? They just want to be able to make money. And you can see some of these, I'm sure. You may not be familiar with Heartland Institute. Anybody familiar with Heartland Institute? Well, they are a very powerful global warming denier organization. And they just put out garbage about it, but people believe it. And they're extreme right, of course. So there's a bunch of them, and my suggestion is, if you want to read a couple of these, that's fine, but get most of your news from the gold standard table, and not just one. Mix it up. Get news from a lot of different publications that you can think very highly of. And if you do that, then I think you'll be well informed. Now, what if it conflicts with my meta beliefs? Well, all right, that's something you have to deal with. That's where critical thinking comes into play. So this is the site that I went to. It's my favorite site of all those that I showed you, but any of those sites will work. Anybody here? So now I'm going to go on to technique number 2. If there's no questions about the previous one or any comments. Okay, quiet crowd. That's good, I guess. Anybody heard of Occam's razor?
Sure.
Oh, tell me what it is.
If there are 2 explanations, it's something you choose the one that requires you to do the least justification. In other words, the simpler the solution, the better.
Simpler the better. And why does that work? Not always, not 100%.
Yeah.
Why does that work? And it goes back to my gasoline example. Because we have facts and we have assumptions. Now, the facts, you can never be truly certain of a fact, but let's just assume that you've got a bunch of facts and you're reasonably certain. But what about assumptions? Assumptions are assumptions by definition because you can't be sure if it's true or not. You cannot go through life without making assumptions. I can tell you that I've done some very complex modeling of physical systems, and if I try to include all of the possibilities, it would be impossible. I can never do it, so I have to make assumptions all the time. So what Occam's razor is saying is that the more assumption you have, the more complicated an explanation is. the more likely it is wrong compared to another, comparing two arguments. Okay, so the argument that is the simplest is likely the truest. Right? And there's only, and this, keep this in mind, it's not that simple is good necessarily, but it's true because the simpler argument will have fewer assumptions. And assumptions are things that you can't possibly know are true or not because they're assumptions. So yeah, if faced with multiple explanations, likely the simplest is the truth, just like you were saying. Minimize assumptions, not facts. So if you're faced with something and somebody gives you, and I'll give you an example. Let's say, in fact, I'll give it to you right now. Let's say your daughter is going on her first date and you don't know anything about the boy she's dating. So you make a bunch of assumptions. Okay, he's a good kid, good parents, he knows how to drive, he doesn't drink. Okay, on and on and on. These are just assumptions. You don't know if it's true. And so what do? You start going in and looking at each one of these assumptions and seeing if you can eliminate it. Okay, so again, nothing that I'm going to tell you is perfect because life is truly uncertain. That's why people that try to predict the future, it's not possible. It's not. Science fundamentally argues that you cannot predict the future because life is so uncertain. So as William of Ockham stated, the fewer assumptions and explanation of the phenomenon depends on the better the explanation. This goes back to, I think it's the 13th century, by the way. This is old stuff. Right? So I'm not claiming I'm giving you the newest information, but it's really, it's a very, very powerful tool. When somebody comes to you with this, this bizarre argument, and it's got all these little different things. I'll give you a good example, by the way, of the flat Earth people, which I am not one of, in spite of my data. And so how do I do this? It's got all this stuff coming at me. Well, you use Occam's razor. You don't have to look at each fact or each assumption that say, well, okay, does this make sense? Okay, compared to other possibilities. So here's the parent. So they say, is he sensible? Does he come from a good family? And so on. So what they can do is, how do you eliminate the assumptions? Well, okay, does he come from a good family? Go visit family. Is he a cautious driver? Does he respect others? You could determine some facts related to this. And as a result, you could eliminate the assumptions one by one by one. And that's what you do. I mean, that's what good scientists will do when they're faced with something. You'll always have assumptions. Can I start eliminating those assumptions? And I will tell you, it's always the assumptions that come back and bite me. Always. And because I know what the facts are. Right? Sometimes I make a mistake. Oftentimes I make mistakes, fine. But the assumptions that I put into my work will always come back and bite me. So here's the flat Earth. I am not making this up. I copied this down from a site. The Earth is a disk. There's a 150-foot wall of ice around it. My favorite, NASA employees secretly guard the ice wall to prevent people from falling off the disk. Earth's gravity is an illusion. The photos of the globe are photoshopped and so on. So people believe this. People believe this. And I put this up because it's rather humorous, and it's an extreme. But using Occam's razor, you don't have to go to the edge of the world to see if there's a 100-foot tall, ice ring around it. You just use Occam's razor. Does this make sense? All of these things, okay, compared to a round globe, which has the fewest assumptions, never mind which has the most facts, okay? So what is it, flat or round Earth? So, I think now this is kind of common sense. Yeah, of course, everybody knows the Earth is round. Columbus knew the Earth was round. I mean, he had no problems. He knew he wasn't going to fall off the edge of the Earth. Like they say, the ancient Greeks knew that the Earth was round. So maybe this is too silly of an example, but nonetheless, use Occam's razor to just eliminate that kind of stuff. And without having to dive into each detail. I get the most bizarre, involved stories. One person was telling me, well, okay, I believe in global warming, but it's not people, it's something the Earth is traveling through this area in space. It's causing it. And then you have to wonder. So here's some examples. A loud noise is heard next to a busy highway, a bomb was dropped, or a truck backfired. Well, you don't know. It could be either one of those, right? But what is the likelihood? What is probable? If you use Occam's razor, it was probably a truck backfire. So you don't know the answer to this, but you could say probably it's a truck backfire, and you could say somebody says, how do you know that? Occam's razor.
But then again, it depends where you are, right?
Yeah, well, that's true. That's very, very true. Yeah, if you're in Gaza, then it certainly was a bomb was dropped in the immediate area.
Truck doesn't have gas.
What's that?
The truck doesn't have gas.
Well, the truck, yeah. This is getting a bit dated because, the truck is an EV truck. Yeah, you're not gonna run that. So, woman is nauseous, is food poisoning, or she's suffering from stomach cancer. Well, she has no diagnosis of stomach cancer prior to this. You see these hypochondriacs, I got this, I got that. Slow down, okay. Are you sure? Use Occam's razor. OCCAN, look it up. There was a second shooter on the grassy knoll. Maybe there was. I don't know. I can't say there wasn't. Okay? But what is the likelihood of that being true? And, if you look at all the conspiracy theories and so on, is it possible? Sure, it's possible. But sitting here now with the information I have, I would have to say, not with certainty, but most likely it wasn't, because if I eliminate all of the assumptions, it disappears. Area 51 has bodies of ETs. Yeah, not likely. Yeah, I'll go. Yeah, you can't find your keys. So somebody broke into your house and stole your keys, but nothing else. Probably misplaced them. I've got these. Have you gotten some of these? Is it likely to be true? I usually have fun. If it's not a robocall, I usually have fun with it. And I said, yeah, okay, you want my credit card? You want my social security number? Give me yours, by the way. Let's exchange. So this is one I just got. I got this a couple of weeks ago in the email. Are you familiar with the Nigerian scams? Have you ever heard of those? By the way, it is a billion-dollar industry. That's how it works. So I got this letter from my friend Kristalina, and she says that she's going to give me $15.5 million. So, okay, what's not to like about her? Okay, and all she wants is some detailed information, and eventually she's going to ask for my banking information. Oh yeah, you mind sending me a check for a couple $100 to process the paper, and then on and on and on. So using Occam's razor, is it likely that somebody's going to give me $15.5 million? Okay.
For any reason at all.
Well, for basically no reason. Just, or is it more likely that it is a scam? And I think Occam's razor would clearly tear this apart. And this happened a couple of weeks ago, because I get these every month or so. I get one of these. Years and years ago, I actually got a paper copy in the mail. It came in the mail. Oh, I wish I didn't throw it away. I wish I still had that.
The best one I had was, and I almost fell for it, was someone who I just canceled the program. And so they called and said, we need to send you a refund.
Mm.
And so, and so they wanted to be able to contact through my computer, my bank, so they could send me the refund. And I said, I'm not doing that, period. I don't care. If you want to send me a refund, send me a check,
Right.
and then just finally hung up on it because, we're just trying to send you the refund of $300 or whatever it was.
Yeah. Well,
But they knew I just canceled. They had that kind of data on me that knew I was in this program and I just canceled.
well, this woman knew, well, it's probably not a woman, whoever it is, this is Kristalina. She knew my name.
Yeah.
So it's easy to get the information. Why does this work, by the way? And I said it's a billion-dollar industry. It works all the time. It works because, number one, system one, right? All right, you're not thinking about it. And it's really system one fueled by greed. Because you see this, $15.5 million loan, there's that, that money, finally, I can buy all the Girl Scout cookies I want now. So that's, but it's basically system one, well, and greed, and they want you to just grab hold of this and not think critically about it. And then if they give you a deadline, okay, that's really good, because now you really got to move pretty fast. So, yeah, this is one, a friend of mine said his daughter didn't get into MIT. So this friend of mine loves his conspiracy theories. I said, what's a conspiracy? Very few, why should, and she's a very bright girl, very accomplished. Well, because, only 3% get admitted. So that's the reason why. Okay, so let me stop here, because I'm going to go into something a little different now. But any questions about Occam's razor? Any examples you can give? And do you understand the principle behind it and how it can be used? Okay, so flawed reasoning unmasked. So this is, this is logical flaws. So, you've heard of this one, if A equals B and B equals C, ergo A must equal C, right? It's logical. Well, this is just the opposite. This is flawed reasoning. This is where people violate laws of logic. And it's the study. It's a lot of work, a lot of academic work has gone into this. So I've got a lot of these. I'm probably not going to go through all of them because it might get a bit tiresome, but so you can always find them in my book. So it derives from the study of formal logic, deductive reasoning, and propositional logic are examples. And as always, people use these because they're hoping we default to our system one. We don't think critically. So a lot of this stuff, I mean, if you think about it seriously, you wouldn't be fooled. So here's one. By the way, does anybody know where Robert Redford got his start? Kind of going off on a tangent. It's great. I remember seeing this. In a very early episode of Twilight Zone. Rod Serling's Twilight Zone? Yeah. He was a police officer and he was shot, and some woman wouldn't let him into her apartment to help him because she was afraid that he was death trying to come get her, trying to fool her. It was very, very heartwarming, typical Rod Serling story, and he looked a lot younger in those days. In any event, this is true. This is, this is what people are saying. The man's green living, but flies on private jets. So attacking the person and not the argument. So what do you think about that? Who cares what the person is? Does that have anything to do with the argument? Nothing at all. And it's probably true. He probably does fly on private jets, and he's demanding people live green. But one does not prove or discount the other. So this is, attacking the person and not the argument. Yeah.
Well, exception to that would be if the argument was based on expertise.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. And we'll get into that about how do you judge experts. But yeah, if an expert says something, but his reputation is poor,
yeah.
Like for instance, he's known to hang around with denier groups. So yes,
yeah,
absolutely. But typically, attacking the person is not addressing the argument. So arguing from ignorance, I say this. Yeah. Something is not proven, then any explanation must be true. I'm sure you've seen this. This is one. Yeah, so I just mentioned that. This somebody told me this. Global warming is only a theory and it's not been proven. And so they came up with, it must be a portion of space where traveling. The guy was serious, okay? He wasn't kidding around. And people will also misdirect what theory means. What I say is, okay, global warming is only a theory. Well, gravity is only a theory. So go up to a 10-story building and jump off and let me know how that works out for you. Another thing, kind of going over the head, but it just occurred to me. So we talked about the universe, and we talked about the universe is expanding. It's been around for 13.5 billion years, And so somebody said, well, what's beyond the universe? Well, I don't know. Nobody knows. Okay, we only know. And they say, you don't know what's beyond the universe. Then what you're saying is probably not true. All right. So. Hello.
Hello, are we late?
Good. See, I started at 10. I know that the
I sent the email out.
the announcement was a little.
No, but I sent out a separate one. I emailed everybody just
You're
straight
right.
from me that said 10 to 11:30 because there was confusion from the Chesapeake Forum one.
Well, I screwed up. Well, thank goodness it wasn't me, that's all I.
When I
Yeah, you
saw,
just get here for the good part.
I'm Carla Howe, and this is Linda.
And Linda Howe.
when I first saw the announcement, I thought this session was starting at 11:30, and I would have been here just about now, showing up just about now if it wasn't for you telling me.
I talked to my boss about it and she said that they have gone back to, our memos come from a website and they can't change it.
Okay.
They won't change it, but I sent an email out
They can't
just from me.
She said hi.
Right.
Well, yes, they won't.
Yeah.
Okay, no problem.
So we're going through factual fallacies. So since you're here now, would you like to discuss it? I'm just going through some examples. If many people believe it, then it must be true. That's sort of like if a billion flies eat shit, then shit must be good for you. So this is classic groupthink. This sort of thing, if global warming is false, then it must be false. If all my friends believe it's false. This gets back to personal benefits, of course. This is what drives your beliefs. It's what you learn growing up. It's who your friends are. It's what you learn from your family, not necessarily factual. What's surrounding you? What are the influences surrounding you? This groupthink is crucially important for our survival because group adhesion is very, very important because we could do much better part of the group than individually. Our survival is likely going to be better and we could learn more. Thank you. But if taken to an extreme, the Jonestown Massacre is a good example of taking it to extreme. So it's really going to balance it. Circular reasoning, my congressional rep said global warming is not occurring, and since he said it, it must be true. Come on, where's that coming from? So he said it, so what? Double standard, this one I see all the time, holding opponent to a higher standard. So in global warming, it's this theory thing. Okay, it's a theory, so it can't be true. Well, no, as I mentioned before, nothing, I'll specifically talk about science. Science can never be absolutely wrong or right. It's just not possible. And in fact, the way science works, it's based on facts, right, of course, but it's really based on consensus of opinion of the experts. So kind of giving you kind of an intro to my chapter on how science works or how it doesn't work. Because nobody can be absolutely certain that anything is absolutely true because nature by itself is just a bundle of probabilities. If you look at an electron orbiting an atom, it has no position. Okay, believe it or not, it has a probability, this cloud of probabilities of being somewhere, but it has no distinct position because that's the way nature is. There's nothing that's certain. So getting back to this, no, of course global warming is not absolutely correct, but nothing in life is. Nothing can be. And so what do when you get something like this? Well, first of all, you say, double standard, right, I caught you. But then the other thing too is you can drop back on your, the most important principle you learn, balance of facts. So where are all the facts that relate to global warming? Where are all the facts that relate to something that's not global warming? And how do you balance those? Because again, I keep saying the same thing because it's important. You will never be absolutely sure of anything. But that doesn't mean you can't make decisions based on the likelihood of something being true. And so this double standard is important. Again, Yeah, so it's really the balance of facts here, it really comes into play. So this one here, using a word to mean two different things, I'll pass that, because this is gonna get kind of tiresome. Either or, yeah, assuming something has only two possibilities, you're either with us or against us, there's clearly shades of gray. This is an important one, by the way. This is a real important one, false authority. And I'll show you one specific example of that later on when we talk about experts. So this is a real popular one in deniers groups. So you have somebody who says that I'm an expert, I've got all these credentials, and they do, and they are. Okay, I said global warming is not happening. But all of their experiences, all of their training has nothing to do with global warming. And so they're using, denier groups will do this all the time. They will take somebody that's either famous or not famous, and they'll parade them because he's got these PhDs and he's got all of this. And, I got a couple of examples of this. And so be careful about somebody saying, well, they're an expert. What are they an expert in? When we talk about how do you judge experts, we'll go into that. I better start moving here. Okay, so here's one. This is, so these people were saying global warming is not happening, and this comes from, okay, so this comes from desmodblog.com. So one of these people said, he actually admitted, he was saying global warming is not happening. He says, I feel a bit of an imposter talking about science because I'm not a scientist. And he actually admitted that what he said was false. That's a bit unusual, but so just be careful about false authority. So you go to your auto mechanic and, okay, they're authorities on fixing your cars. That's great. Okay, they don't know anything about vaccines. They don't know anything about dentistry. Okay, do not ask them their advice. Oh, yeah, I got this pain here. What is that? No, go to a doctor. Okay, so be careful about false authorities. False cores, linking. Let me just pass through this, see if there's anything interesting. What was that?
The one about the car washing is true.
Oh, isn't it though?
Because every time I wash my car, it rains.
Isn't it something? Yeah. Well, it's a recent bias. It's you don't remember all the times when you washed your car where it didn't rain. You just remember where it didn't rain. So faulty cause and effect. There was one, I can't remember, I'm going to get this a little wrong, but it was so interesting. This woman sued this organization because she lost her psychic powers. Because something happened, it was cause and effect, like maybe it rained one day or something happened, and because of that, she lost her psychic powers. She actually won. I think she lost on appeal, but she actually won. So just because something happens doesn't mean that it's causing it.
Or correlation is not causation.
Yes, exactly. Just because two things happen, one happens first and then the second one happens, doesn't mean they're connected. Doesn't mean one caused the other. When I was a young engineer, we were talking about that, and so he said, well, if I put a log in the fire, it's going to burn. But is it because it's wood burns or round things burn? Okay, so I don't know, right? Who knows until obviously you could go into the chemistry and so on. So, and guilt by association, the global warming is false because these fascist liberals support it. Well, okay, that may be true. Fascist liberals may be very evil, but that has nothing to do with global warming. Okay, so this, hasty generalization, we talked about this. Don't let a single fact, this egregiously violates the balance of facts principle. One fact of conclusion does not make. All right, so let me just go through
People
these.
constantly get weather and climate mixed up.
Yes.
That's something that makes me crazy. Yeah.
Well, weather and climate, climate is, it's the average of all the temperatures across the globe over a single year, okay, compared to what it was in the early 1900s. Weather is, what's the weather today at this location?
At this moment.
At this moment, right. So weather and climate are distinctly different. That's when somebody says, well, it's cold out, or it's hot out. Okay, global warming must be in. No. Balance of facts principle, please. But you're missing up the difference between weather and climate. All right, so let me just go through this. This is true, by the way. Bring up a Spurs argument. ExxonMobil has been sued and continues to be sued by the investors for misleading about the global warming risk that they face. Well, somebody will say, well, all corporations do that. Well, so what? ExxonMobil is still misleading your investors. I get this one a lot is, well, this politician is crooked, he's lying, you can't trust him, and the response I get back is, all politicians are like that. Come on. All right, again, I'm going to go through this because we're kind of running out of time. 11:30, right? Okay, sampling bias, drawing conclusions from a limited set of facts or ignoring all the relevant facts. Does anybody can give me an example of that?
Your flat earth thing earlier.
Thank you. Thank you. My flat earth stuff is clearly an example of sampling bias. Balance of facts principle, again, we're never going to get away from that. All right, so let me just go through this because, all right, so false reasoning on mass. So now you have your tools to demolish those ill-informed lying creeds. So use your newfound superpowers wisely. And as an added benefit, anybody that uses this stuff at you, I think it gives you an indication of the kind of person that they are. And it could be they're doing it, I mean, they haven't studied this, they could be doing it, just from experience or whatever, by accident. But they're trying to manipulate you. And they're trying to have you use your system once so you don't think critically about what's going on. And my grandkids are great at manipulating me, but I jump into it wholeheartedly. They know how to manipulate their grandparents. But still, things that are far more important. Just remember that people want to get their hand in your pocket and take the money out and do whatever else there is. I'm not generous saying everybody's like that. And clearly, present company excluded, but just be careful. Okay, so now I'd like to talk about experts. So who's an expert? Can anybody tell me what an expert is? How do you define an expert?
Greatest knowledge of.
Knowledgeable about a topic? Absolutely. Yeah. Accomplished, perhaps. Trained, perhaps, in that area.
Many years of experience.
Years of experience. Anyone sufficiently knowledgeable in a field, so they could have an advanced degree, like a climatologist at a university of national level. Well, this talk is revolving around global warming, but you could apply it to anything. A professional with some training in the field, an engineer or technician working on global warming experiments. Someone experienced but without formal training, technicians, managers, journalists. These are all experts. An amateur with a driven interest, amateur astronomers are often the first to find new solutions. These are experts. Okay, so let's talk about this one. Yeah, they got to be honest, right? So we can't go wrong, but let's see. Let's dig in a little deeper. So many examples, so little time. Does anybody know who Willie Soon is? Ever hear of him? Oh, he's a denier favorite. He was a scientist at the Harvard-Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics, and he claimed that global warming was not happening. He didn't claim that. He claimed that we are not responsible for global warming. It's CO2, people, not anything else. And the only thing that's causing global warming is because the sun's output is increasing. Okay. And now his work was debunked by experts. And, example, one NASA guy says that's garbage, please don't. Here's a plot of total solar output, okay, and that's these dashes here, and then temperature, 11-year average. And you can see that from 1980 onwards, the solar output actually went down, but our temperatures actually went up. So solar activity has nothing to do with it, but he simply ignored this data, okay? But there's a much darker side. He took $1.2 million from fossil fuel companies And as required in these kind of positions, he never reported it. Exxon Mobil, Southern Company, which is a coal company and so on, gave him a lot of money. And so he was an expert in astrophysics. He had no expertise in global warming. And on top of that, he's a very, very, very dishonest person. At least he was back then. I don't know what he's doing now. He's still floating around somewhere. He's credentialed. He's an expert, okay, in his field. But he was taking a lot of money from people. And so, why does this work? Well, why do people take money? I guess I don't want to go on a vacation or something. Okay, so this leads me to the second most important concept you can get away. So please tell me what it refers to. Anyway.
What?
The most important concept you will take away from my talk.
Balance of,
The balance of facts principle.
Right.
Yes, nothing is more important than that. The second one that we talked about last week, critical thinking, okay? Think critically about something. I'm now going to give you the last one. Well, this is the second one in this talk. So you've got the balance of facts principle. Can you guess what the next one is based on what I just said about my friend Willie? Follow the money. Dear Lord, follow the money. Who pays that? Why are they paying that? As this fellow Paul said, buy your gas next time, but get your signs elsewhere for obvious reasons. So why is that? Why is that important? Well, because if people, we all have to get paid, right? We have to get paid for what we do for our profession. I get paid for all of my work, not for this class, by the way, but for all the work that I do. But I get paid from government grants and things like that, where they're not telling me what they want to hear. Okay, so I can give you hundreds and hundreds of examples. So follow the money, because that will control oftentimes what a person is working on and what the conclusions are. So if I get money from the Department of Energy, they want me to show results about energy, but they don't care if they're good, bad, or indifferent. They just want, okay, I'm paying you to reduce the energy of these furnaces. I get that a lot. Okay, if you can't, that's fine. But don't lie about it.
but doesn't that depend on who the audience is?
Sure.
Right, because if it's lay people, right, and they're trying to convince them it's different than, I would imagine if you were sitting in Exxon's board, the scientists, they would want to know whether their thoughts were correct or not.
Exxon, there's a lot of literature on this. Exxon in the 60s knew all about global warming from their own internal scientists. They knew it. And that's what's leading to those lawsuits that I mentioned. They were very aware of it, but they, that's how they make their money. In fact, I don't know if it's Exxon. I can't remember the organization, but it's either Exxon or an organization Exxon belongs to. They send their lawyers down to Texas to talk to the schools to talk about what to put in the textbooks. Because Texas is the biggest purchaser of textbooks for high school. And they push them to eliminate any mention of global warming, or at least keep it one-sided. And so, because that's where they make money, right? The cigarette companies were outstanding. They started this. They started a playbook on this stuff. Okay, and I can go on and on about that as well.
Yeah, but that's not, the point is that their scientists knew.
Yes.
So they listened to somebody, or their scientist, and knew what the facts were. Then when they chose a different audience, right, which is the public, and selling gas, that's when it changed, right?
Well, yeah.
Let's make money.
Yeah, I mean, it changed because they knew the facts and they chose, let's just be honest, okay? They chose to lie.
Right.
And they chose to lie so that they could make money, and that goes, follow the money, okay? This is why it happens. The coal-fired power plants, they make money by emitting CO2. You don't emit CO2 from a coal-fired power plant, they're not making any money because the power plant's not operating. So, exactly right, follow the money. So Exxon knew all about it, but they chose to hide it so that they could make money. And now they're paying for it, by the way. Vested interest, this really happened. NIH funded a $100 million study to see if the alcohol protects against heart attacks and strokes. Very worthwhile study. All right, until you dig a little deeper, much of the money went to the alcohol industry. So you have the alcohol industry studying the alcohol industry. So that's like having the fat kid guard the chocolate cake. You know, there was a advisory panel that found it and they just stopped it. But still, there was some. So vested interest in addition to follow the money principle. Okay, so let's see, what do I have? I'm going to move through this, right? So, you know, experts must be impartial, have nothing to gain from the outcome, or they have more to gain from doing a job. So Diogenes, I think you may have heard of him, a real life person. The mythical story is that he spent a lifetime futilely searching for an honest man. He had this candle that he walked around here. What do you call that? But he really existed. So we so doomed. Now we've got a computer. He didn't. So who funds them? Their skills. I'm going to just run through this because their reputation. We talked about this. History of their organization, their current research, their beliefs. Peer-reviewed journals are really important. You know, the gold standard of scientific work has been scrutinized by experts in the field, real experts. And so anybody remember or know who Andrew Wakefield is? Let's say was, but he's still alive. Andrew Wakefield said that there's a link between vaccines and autism, and he was the toast of the town. Turned out that Andrew, old boy, was investing in his own vaccine. And so he was trying to destabilize the vaccine industry, and he connected it with autism. Oh, yeah. Yeah. And he got caught. Okay, he got caught, and he lost his license to practice medicine. So he did get caught, but the damage he does continues. Now, you could go back to the 1800s, and there's always been some reluctance to take vaccines for various reasons. But now, good old Andrew, he really triggered a tsunami of resistance on vaccines because of this. You know, follow the money. You ever hear about this one, cold fusion?
Yeah.
Yeah, Fleischmann and Pond. So fusion energy is a way of creating, it's a nuclear energy, way of creating energy without any, very little, radioactive material left over. So current fission energy right now, it makes, what do you call it, radioactive material afterwards that lasts for hundreds and hundreds of years. So cold fusion, a lot of work is going on in cold fusion, but it's none of that. You get nuclear energy the same way you would get, but it doesn't have any of the bad side effects. So Fleischmann and Pons discovered, they had a little mayonnaise jar of all things, that they were able to make cold fusion at room temperature. It turned out that it wasn't. But they went to the media before it was peer reviewed, and they went public, and it created quite a stir, but they didn't know what they were doing. All right, so here's two extremes. Fred Singer, and I'll give you another one. You can go to this site, thesmog.com. And so this is a huge denier, very, very credentialed. He is the guy that started the cigarette misinformation. And then he moved all his skills to global warming. He is now deceased. Yeah. Same playbook, exact same playbook that he brought over to global warming. And then as the other side of it, I don't know if you know this fellow, James Hansen. You would know him by his hat because he seems to wear that hat everywhere. But he was a former NASA scientist, and he's become very vocal about global warming. So you could find him in there as well. Okay, so I've got 10 minutes left. So let me wrap it up with silver bullets. So I call it, lies are the undead that just keep walking around that you can't get rid of them. So let's talk about the 10 silver bullets that you now have available to you. Balance of facts principle. Go nowhere without this in your wallet. There will always be uncertainty, but go with the side that has the most relevant and vetted facts. Okay, eliminate assumptions, and so on. follow the money principle, right? These are the two most important things you can take away from what I'm saying. So follow the money trail. Now, how do you find it? Well, okay, you're not going to find it by just going through life on system one. You got to dig. And maybe you got to ask people that know what they're doing about these kind of things. You could use the sites that I showed you before. But follow the balance of facts principle, follow the money principle. If you use these two, for the most part, they're not going to go wrong. I mean, like I say, it takes effort, but you'll figure it out. Okay, if there's a topic that truly interests you. This is really important. What is the evidence and what is its source? Never compromise on this requirement. If somebody gives me a fact, okay, well, I only said now it's getting tiresome for some people. Where's this coming from? What's your source? Okay, so somebody was saying that, well, I can't remember the details now, but such and such happened, and I could use the Occam's razor to tear it apart. But this one here is, tell me what your source is. And if it doesn't come from a source or it's a not very reliable source, they're not going to tell you. They're going to hit you with something else that's even more bizarre. Don't ever compromise on this if it's important to you.
Can I ask a question here?
Sure.
Today in the Wall Street Journal, the headline is Flood of Fake Science Forces Multiple Journal Closures. Wiley to shutter 19 more journals with tainted by fraud. So how do you know that the source that you're reading is not compromised? I mean, it seems pretty prolific now. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, there's no hard and fast rule you can use, but if you go through all 10 of these, it'll help you. But that's the problem now with the internet and things, because things spread so rapidly, and so well, if you were here in the earlier part of my talk, there were sites that you can go to where you could vet all of these news outlets. And as I mentioned, nothing is perfect. I don't know, Carla, we have a few minutes left. I don't know if you could expand on that a bit. What did the article say?
So it says fake studies have flooded the publishers of top scientific journals, leading to thousands of retractions and millions of dollars in lost revenue. The biggest hit has come to Wiley, a 217-year-old publisher, which Tuesday will announce it is closing 19 journals, some of which were infected by large-scale research fraud. In the past 2 years, Wiley has retracted more than 11,300 papers that appeared compromised, according to a spokesman, and closed 4 journals. And it isn't alone. At least 2 other publishers have retracted hundreds of suspect papers each. Several hundreds have pulled smaller clusters of bad papers. I mean, you were talking about that earlier when you were saying that you review some papers that are not very good. But anyway, it threatens the legitimacy of the nearly $30 billion academic publishing industry and the credibility of science.
Okay, you don't need to go on because we're running out of time, but thank you. Yes. As I say, nothing in life is perfect. There are many articles that are retracted from these journals because the system at least somehow is working because people are finding out. Like an example, which is, they try to duplicate a lot of studies in the psychology field, and they're finding a lot of these studies don't replicate. There's nothing underhanded about it. It's just it's a very difficult area. But if you have, nonetheless, it's flawed, but they're finding out where the flaws are. And if you have bona fide experts that have nothing to gain by reviewing these articles.
Peer review.
What's that?
Peer review.
Peer review.
It comes down to peer review.
Peer review. It's not perfect, right? But it works most of the time. But, you have all these articles that Carla mentioned. What about all the ones that are okay? So nothing in life is certain, but if you follow the principles, you'll mostly be right. If you're dealt a pair of aces, you're not going to win all the time, right? But 80% of the time you will win. But that's, I didn't realize it was as widespread as Carla mentioned. Yeah, so beware of vested interests. Never, ever, this is a serious one. If they hide their source of funding, just walk away. They won't tell you where they're getting their money from. This happens a lot. There are a lot of political, like PACs and super PACs, don't have to report where the money's coming from. Never trust an anonymous source, ever. Okay, if you don't know where the source is coming from, just walk away. Maybe it's true, I don't know, but walk away from it. Occam's razor, when overwhelmed with bizarre facts and convoluted logic. So you now know how to handle logical fallacies, find the true experts. So now you know how to judge sites. Okay, you've got a bunch of sites that you can go to judge the factual content. And most importantly, think critically. Turn on system 2 and let system 1 enjoy the ride from the back seat. So the 3 things: turn on system 2, okay, balance of facts principle, follow the money. Okay, nothing else. You could forget everything else I said. What, you buy my book?